Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 25 of the Telecaster build, and in this episode we're going to crack on with getting more of the finishing work done. But before I get into that, if you remember about a week ago I said that I was desperately trying to get to 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We're currently at the 18th of December, so we've got a few more days to go, and I'm actually down to 90 subscribers away from that 10,000 mark. So please, if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. It'd be a really great Christmas present for me, and it will also herald in some changes to the channel that I've always promised that I was going to do when I hit 10,000 subs. Anyway, on with the build. And in comparison to the body, the work on this neck is going to be fairly straightforward. We simply need to remove any hardware that we don't want on it, give it a nice good sand up, make sure that all the inconsistencies and all the little imperfections are properly sanded out of it. Give it a mask up, a few coats of amber lacquer and then some clear just to seal it all off. And obviously we need to do something about a logo on the headstock. So sounds like a lot of work, but in comparison to the body, very, very straightforward. And to start with, break out a screwdriver and we'll just start working our way through getting these tuners off. Now I think I'd actually done a decent job of sanding this up in the past, but there are just one or two little inconsistencies I want to get rid of. Where I screwed those tuners in, it's kind of raised the wood up a little bit, so I've just nipped that back down again. I'm going to sand this to 240 grit. That should be easily enough for what we want. And then just in these transitions here, there's a little bit of notchiness that I've missed in the previous sanding, so we'll just spend a few minutes kind of getting into there. And kind of clean that up as we would want it. And because I'm putting an amber lacquer onto this neck, I don't actually want that to cover the binding and kind of discolour it, because then it won't match with what's on the body. So for this first step of this, I'm going to just mask it up, and then I can just take that off when we do the clear coats. And that will also make masking the rest of this fretboard off very straightforward. And then I've just got a small screw that I'm going to drop into one of the neck screw holes so we can hang it up. And then I've got a chunky great bolt, and I'm just going to kind of screw that into that tuner hole. It's a nice tight fit. Just get some tape around that, because you never know, I might actually need it as a bolt one day. And that will give me a handy little handle just to turn this around with when I'm spraying it. So without further ado, we will get this over to the spray booth, get it hung up, and we can look at getting some amber onto it. Okay, so that's hung up and ready to go, and we can just lay down a couple of coats of this vintage amber. Now, I've had a couple of questions about wearing a mask when doing this. Generally, even with a spray can, I would wear a mask. However, it does make it quite difficult when you're trying to talk at the same time, which is what I've been doing through quite a lot of this. If I was using a spray gun, I would never even think about talking and spraying at the same time, because it just pumps out too much material and it's kind of vaporized. These cans, they do kind of put down a lot of material, but it doesn't vaporize it in the same way. So it's a much more concentrated spray and it doesn't fill the room up quite as much. So while I would always recommend you wear a mask when you're doing this kind of stuff, I sometimes just don't when I'm using a rattle can, even though I should. But on this occasion, just to please everyone, I will put a mask on, and I'll also run the extractor once I've given this a good shake up and got it ready to go. Okay, so that's one fairly thickish coat to start with, and I think we're kind of somewhere near the colour we want, so I'm going to leave that for 10-15 minutes to dry up, and then I'll give it another coat, which I think will probably be enough. And while that is drying on the neck, I'm going to just have a look and see if we're ready to do the scraping on this binding. And I think we are. That is pretty much perfect. Like I said last time, you can't leave it too long. Because the paint gets too hard and it cracks or chips. But then again, you can't go too quickly. Because it's too soft. Now I have straight away, I've gone into that a little bit. So I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of touching up on that. Which is a shame. But I'm just going to carry on, kind of work my way around this. And get it all cleaned up. Okay, and there's the binding scraped off on the top, and there's a couple of little places where I need to perhaps do a little bit of touching in, and there is still a few little bits of kind of mainly red stain that I need to get off, but that is the bulk of it done, and I think that is looking very, very nice. And it's amazing how just that little kind of 1.5 millimeters of white really makes this top pop amazingly. So I'm very, very happy with how this is looking now. There are a couple of little bits that I'll touch in, and to be honest, it's fairly straightforward at this stage of the game. I've just got a little bit of the black paint that I used for this, and I'm just going to very gently just kind of touch that in where I've gone a little bit deep. And I'll leave that overnight to dry out. And I can come back to it and just re-scrape round it. And we should be as good as gold. I might just have to kind of ever so gently nib it down just to kind of get it flat again. But what you tend to find is as the solvent leaves this paint, it'll thin right down anyway. So I think we're pretty good to go on that now. So I'll get this turned over and I'll do the same on the back off camera, because you don't need to see all of that all over again. And I'll join you back when that's done. Okay, so I've actually left this kind of overnight and it has dried up quite nicely. It is quite a strong colour. I don't think we need any more colour on than that. That is easily amber enough. So I'm just going to get all this masking off, particularly off the binding. And I've just got some 800 grit paper and very gently just going to kind of nib this down. Just any little bits of dust that might have got in there or any grain that's been raised. And also some of that amber had got onto the binding right in those corners, so I'm just going to clean that up as well. And this is really, it's just a very, very gentle flick just to smooth everything off. So that all feels smooth enough now. And what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to rub down on the transition between the binding and the lacquer, just to clean that all up and get rid of any step that there might have been from the masking tape. So from there we need to mask up again, but I'm not going to mask the binding off this time, or at least I'm not going to mask the sides of the binding up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mask from the nut slot over the frets, and I'm just pushing that right in with my fingernail and thumbnail, just to try and limit the amount of lacquer that kind of gets up past the fret, because if I can get away with outdoing any kind of scraping and cleaning up on the fretboard, I'll be a happy bloke. So I'll just work my way up, get the rest of this done, and I'll join you back when it's all finished. Okay, so that's all taped up again. It took bloody ages, but I need to make sure I'm sealing off as much of that as I can, and I'm fairly confident that I've got it. So basically, we need to now go and hang this back up again, break out the clear lacquer, and give both this and the body their final clear coats. However, that's going to take quite some time to slowly build up, so I'm not going to film all of that. I will slowly build those up over the course of a few days until we get something like the finish that we want. Okay, so that's had a couple of coats on now, and it is starting to build up quite a shine, as you can see there. So hopefully we won't have too much of a problem getting this one lacquered up. So I'm going to carry on with this off camera, so this is as good a place as any to leave this one. So as always, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of days' time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.